What's up, crew? Nick Loper here from VirtualAssistantAssistant.com. Today, I'm joined by Joel Nelson from ZenVirtualAssistantsFinder.com. Joel, what is happening, man?
It is good to see you again, Nick. This is our second try on the recording, so I'll quickly repeat myself that it's just great to see you again. It's been a while since you were actually a guest on our podcast, the Zen Virtual Assistants Finder podcast. So great to see you again.
As always. So today we want to dive into what the ZVAF business is all about. You're doing, it's a recruiting service now.
It is. I call it a matchmaking service. Specifically, it's a custom VA matchmaking service. And I'll take one step back and I'll tell you how I got here, because I think it sort of explains why I decided to try a little bit different model in the virtual assistant world. Okay. And that is very briefly is that once upon a time, I was a commodity trader. And specifically, I was a managed futures systems trader, which is a fancy way of saying I use computers to find patterns in commodity markets. So I had a small hedge fund, and I was writing a book and doing a blog and doing a podcast and trying to do everything myself and be a hero. And I made myself sick. I actually really gave myself an ulcer. Mm. And at the same time, I read, the book you probably hear about all the time, 4-Hour Workweek. And it just blew my mind, made me really think different about time, opportunity cost, stuff like that. And of course, I read the chapter about Philippines-based virtual assistants. And it kind of sounded a little too good to be true. I had never heard of it before. I didn't even know outsourcing was possible unless you were a Fortune 500 company. Mm-hmm. But I had nothing to lose. So, my experiment, as I called it, was I'm going to give this 1 month at a budget of $600. And I'm going to find a Filipino virtual assistant. So I spent a couple weeks, interviewed over 20 VAs, just finding them randomly, LinkedIn, onlinejobs.ph, wherever, okay. And hired one and was all excited. And it turned out to be a complete disaster. And I quickly realized it was a disaster 100% because of me, because I didn't know what I was doing. I chose the wrong VA for the wrong job. I didn't know the right questions to ask in the interview. I didn't have any idea how to manage tasks. I didn't have any task management software. I was doing everything the wrong way. So luckily, I hired another VA. Her name was Penny. Her name is Penny. And she was what I would describe as a rock star virtual assistant. And that's when I totally realized, oh my gosh, all the things that Tim Ferriss talked about in the 4-Hour Workweek are possible. And my productivity just blasted off, and my peace of mind blasted off as well. And the rest is history. So I began introducing friends to this idea about, man, you are not going to believe, what I've been doing and how it works. And about 10 friends and colleagues later, we were all enjoying the same successes. And
this is still in the investing business.
We're in the investing business. It had nothing to do with outsourcing. This is just me as a client, me as a user of virtual assistants. And we were all having the same successes, and we were all having the same problems. And I can talk about what some of those problems are. But long story short, I thought, wow, there's a business here, because I don't see anybody addressing these challenges that we're finding. And I think there's a business. And from that, Zen Virtual Assistants Finder was born.
Very cool. And you started out as a kind of a traditional agency model, right? Where it's okay, we're going to find people and we're going to kind of charge a markup on their salary and we'll help manage them. And we're going to have this whole distributed team and it's going to be great. And
exactly right. So I thought, listen, let's start with the classic model, which you completely articulated, is we'll hire great people, we'll pay them X, and we will charge the client X plus whatever. Yeah. And that works great. In fact, I called it the pay-as-you-go cell phone model, which was basically a client would buy a bank of hours at the beginning of the month, like you would do as a pay-as-you-go cell phone. Okay. And any task that came up, they would send it to the Philippines. We would task that to the right person. Sometimes it would require a project manager and then maybe a few people who are subtask managers. Say, for example, they wanted to start a podcast. Well, we'd have to find voiceover people, some graphic designers, and a podcast producer. But basically, the client would just dump whatever into the top of the funnel, and out the bottom would come a finished project. And that was awesome for a while, and I emphasize a while, because it began to, I could see very early this is not a very scalable model, which means that it was great for the clients when we were small, but as we got bigger and we brought on more clients, one of the challenges we had internally was that it was every new month was new clients and new tasks, learning to work with them again, starting over. And that it was impossible to create any sustainable repetitive systems that ultimately would make our life easier and ultimately would make the client experience better. So we decided, let's focus on a smaller part of our business, which was the matchmaking, what I call matchmaking. Some people call it headhunting. And that's what Zen Virtual Assistants Finder is now, emphasis on the finder. Yeah. So what we do is we focus on clients, usually people who are new to the outsourcing world, who don't exactly know what can be accomplished, or even if they have a business that's suitable to outsourcing. And then we work with them to find them custom and vetted, proven, high-level, executive-level, Philippines-based virtual assistants. And, you know, I can walk you through what the sort of 5-step process we go through is, but basically we're a matchmaking service. Think of us as a dating service. You know, the client tells us what they're looking for in a relationship, and then we put together a list of candidates that meet those requirements.
Do you find that your target customer is somebody like yourself who's kind of just swamped and overwhelmed in their business, or are these like stay-at-home parents, or who are like
Well, I thought that everyone was kind of going to be the, you know, proverbial millennial like you and me, where we have online businesses, we're comfortable working virtually, we're comfortable outsourcing tasks, and the shock has been that it's of course we have some clients like that, but we get a lot of people who you wouldn't think would be comfortable with outsourcing. I'll give you a couple examples. Two of them actually owned physical manufacturing companies in the Midwest. So these are very Midwest guys, very patriotic, and they run into a situation where simply they need someone to take some busy work off their desk. And rather than hiring locally, it's actually more convenient and economic for them to find a great person in the Philippines. So those are businesses that are actually real brick and mortar making thing businesses.
Yeah. Are you finding that people like, is this for full-time hires, or do you do part-time recruiting as well?
That's one of the great things that we do is it's completely custom. So one of the things that we do in our free consultation, which is step 1 of the process, which I can tell you about in a second, is find out exactly what they need. You know, so if it is a simple project-based, you know, some people might say, look, I want a website. I want it to look like a $5,000 website, but I want to spend $500 getting it done by outsourcing to the Philippines. Then we can connect them with a series of web developers who work on a project basis. So they might get paid $250 up front, and then another $250 upon completion of the task. So that's what we would call project-based. Other people need someone full-time, and they need someone full-time pronto. So for them, it's 40 or 50 hours a week. And to find a project manager, someone that can not only help them, but start to build a team under them. And of course, some people, it's just, hey, I want to try something 2 hours a day for the next 60 days. So whatever the client needs, we can basically accomplish.
Okay. What's the next stage in your process after this kind of needs evaluation?
Right. So the process starts with a free, no obligation consultation. And we say it's a 15-minute consultation, but it usually goes 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And that's available.
They're talking to you, or who are they talking to?
They're either talking to me directly, or they're talking to one of our team leaders based in the Philippines. And they're talking exactly how you and I are talking right now. In fact, we use Google Hangouts most of the time because we find it most reliable. So that's a totally free, no obligation. Anybody can go to zenvirtualassistantsfinder.com, and at the top of the page, 15-minute consult. Pick a convenient time that works for you and just brainstorm. Find out what we can do, what you need to do. And the reason I did that was because some of the other sites that offer similar services like ours will force you to pay before they'll even talk to you. And I just thought, from a customer perspective, especially somebody who's maybe not outsourced before, maybe uncomfortable, unfamiliar with the idea, that's a pretty big leap to just swipe $500 on a PayPal and hope somebody goes to work and follows through. So my goal was that was one of my big hesitations is, man, I'm new to this. I don't know where to start, back 3 years ago. And that's asking a lot. It's putting a lot of trust in somebody. So our goal is we put out a podcast every week, at least every week, sometimes twice a week. You can find that at zenvirtualassistancefinder.com/podcast. We have almost 60 episodes now where we do interviews with people, all kinds of different entrepreneurs and business owners who have virtual assistant experience. And then they share their mistakes and successes. So between the podcast and us being willing to talk for free for as long as it takes, I think that's a really important step one that makes us a little bit different. Step two is we have what we call a friend clarity form. The friend clarity form is just a very basic Google survey. And we ask some very specific questions. And the client and either me or the team leader will go through this and ask the client questions. And this is to get really clear on exactly what they want done. Is it just basic email admin? Do they need a podcast made? Do they need an HD YouTube channel built for them? Do they need call center support? It's just over 100 questions and checkboxes of things that a client needs.
Okay.
So we get really into detail. And again, at this stage, client, hasn't paid for everything, or hasn't paid for anything. So then once we're clear and the client is comfortable about taking the next step, our fee is a flat fee of $497. And we offer a whole bunch of series of promos and discounts, which I can tell you about in a second. But basic flat fee, $497. And what they get for that is in 7 days or less, they will meet 3 to 5, and I'll explain why it's not a fixed number in a second, but they will meet 3 to 5 custom vetted, proven virtual assistants, often with, well over a decade in experience that meets their custom needs. We'll then set up a call, again on Hangouts, just like this, where the client gets to meet each of those people individually. And either I or one of our team leaders is on the call to make sure the client asks the right questions and guide the conversation.
Oh, okay.
Each of those calls takes about 20 to 30 minutes. So it's not like we just say, hey, thanks for the money. Here's your list. Go take care of yourself. So we're still, again, it's basically the service I wish I would have had when I would have started, which can somebody please just hold my hand through the interviews, right?
Gotcha.
And so then we get to step 4. Step 4 is the client decides, hey, I like candidate number 2. I like candidate number 5. And then we set up call number 2. And before I explain what happens in call number 2, one thing that we see is that everybody we bring to the client can do the job. They're totally technically competent. Ultimately, it just comes down to personality. It's just who is somebody that you would be comfortable working with. And I'll give you a really specific example. So we have this really awesome VA we've introduced to clients in the past. Her name's Rosanna. And she's really kind of, one client used the word corporate. She's a very professional, organized corporate. She's kind of the person you would expect. You'd walk into like a bank and she would be sitting behind the desk as the first point of contact, Okay. And we introduced her to one client and he had a technology company. It was kind of a fun, kind of Hootsuite sort of thing. And he's like, she's really smart, but I need someone, fun, who's willing to bounce ideas off. It's just not the right for my corporate culture. So even though she could do everything he needed her to do, it wasn't a good culture fit. 1 week later, we introduced her to another client who has a Forex trading company in Manhattan who wants somebody like that. He needs somebody exactly like that instills trust and is safe and sort of, very corporate-y, for lack of a better word. So the point of all that is that meeting all these people, it really comes down to personality and culture, which is another thing we ask in our friend clarity form is what kind of person are you looking for? Is this a startup and you want somebody kind of sassy who's willing to throw back ideas, or do you just want a soldier to go out there and follow instructions? So anyway, then we're at stage 4 and the client has chosen the VA candidate they want to work with. And then again, at this stage, we don't just, say thanks and let the client go. At this stage, we of course make the introduction, congratulate everybody. But this is the most important part because at this stage, stage 4, is when we actually get into building task management. and we assist with choosing the right task management tools, and we assist with creating priority tasks and actually getting organized so that when we step away, we being Zen Virtual Assistants Finder, that the client and the virtual assistant basically have the who, what, where, when, and why all worked out for the next series of months. You know, what are our responsibilities? When are we going to be doing this? Who's going to be doing this? Do we need to build a team? And if we need to build a team, who do we need to hire?
Okay.
And the task management, as a side note, Nick, is the single biggest point of failure that I see is when, and you can jump in and share maybe your experience, that if you don't have a centralized location where you and your virtual assistant know, as I say again, who, what, where, when, and why, and when it's supposed to get done, you know, you're just asking for a disaster. So one of the biggest things we stress is getting prioritized, and it doesn't matter what task management you use. I'm kind of in love with Trello at the moment.
Okay.
But we help at that stage. And then step 5, finally, again, we check in after a week and we just see how the relationship is going and what we can do to speed things up. So in summation, you know, 5-step process. And the goal is, long story short, to hold a customer's hand through the entire hiring process, make sure they pick the right person the first time and hit the ground running.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are doing a ton of work for your $500 fee, your $497 fee.
Well, it's nice that you say that, because
long-term relationship, especially, I mean, that's if that person ends up being a hit and sticks around for, like, that's a great value. Sorry, go ahead.
I really appreciate you saying that, because that's not a random number I just came up with. You know, I thought, you know, what's a part-time virtual assistant going to cost? What's that going to cost a month? And, you know, depending on how much you pay
Well, I
them,
guess that's a good question. What
Yeah.
kind of, so after, beyond the matchmaking service, then it's on me to go out and pay my VA directly. Yes.
Mhm.
And so
That's
I'm
exactly
negotiating.
right.
That's like, are you negotiating salary on my behalf too, or is
Nope.
that between me and them?
Nope, that's 100% between you and them.
Okay.
So first, really quick, just to finish the thought, the $497 price point is, I wanted it to be kind of a no-brainer, which is it had to be approximately the price you were going to pay a virtual assistant for, say, a month or 3 weeks, and getting it right the first time and really being productive from the time the relationship starts. So that's kind of where
you see that's kind of a typical full-time monthly salary for some of your recent recruits.
Exactly. So let me address the second question, is what do you expect to pay and how do you pay? So just to be clear, we are just the matchmaking service, and we can certainly provide feedback on what you, the client, would expect to pay, the type of VA you're looking for. But ultimately, that is completely between you and the virtual assistant. So we have no ongoing interest, no ongoing profit sharing relationship, nothing like that. We just find the best people and connect them. Now, what people can expect to pay, somebody who's a general virtual assistant, for those not familiar with what that might mean, that would be somebody who would help you get organized with your calendar, get your emails organized, maybe do some basic transcription for you, that sort of thing. Just somebody to help take care of the busy work, maybe do some online shopping, something like that, find you the best airline tickets. We would expect them to be paid about $5 US dollars per hour. At the higher end of that is, say you have somebody who's just a total rock star web developer, then you would expect to pay them probably $10 or $12 per hour. Or for like a project manager, somebody who would essentially act as your chief operating officer, manage teams, help organize teams, would expect to pay between $9 and $10 per hour. And keep in mind, these are people with, you know, college degrees, MBAs in many cases, masters in college science who are web developers, masters in marketing who are social media managers, stuff like this. So the value is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's just not some of like the geo arbitrage stuff that is open to us today that wasn't around 20 years ago, or only open to the Fortune 500 companies, like you said, 20 years ago.
It is. And I think people, one thing we do is we do a webinar weekly every Thursday. And there's a couple of cool things that happen on the webinar, one of which is you can win our service for free, which I'll tell you about in your audience about in a second. But one of the things that is fun is, as part of the webinar, we invite live some actual real Filipino virtual assistants to come on the webinar and do a live Q&A with the attendees. Because people ask things like, and you're laugh when I say this, but I asked the same question. Well, do they really speak English? Like, can I talk to them? And it's like, yeah, they speak English, and they have Netflix, and they like watching House of Cards, and they can. It's probably the most Americanized Southeast Asian country there is. So it's very easy to communicate with them. But about the webinar, so another cool thing we do is that every webinar, every Thursday, and if you want to check it out, just go to zenvirtualassistantsfinder.com. You can see the webinar area there to opt in. But it's we give away our service for free to a lucky attendee, which is really fun because then all the attendees can see who gets to meet their VA for free, and it's a fun thing to be a part of. Also, the price on the webinar is only $400 versus the regular price $497. So if you have questions and basically want to find out if virtual assistants are the right thing for you, it's a pretty easy way to just check in for 45 minutes or an hour, learn what we do, learn what Filipino virtual assistants can do, and if you're interested, there's a chance you can get the whole service for free.
Yeah, that's a very cool opportunity for sure. So the alternative to this is posting my job on Upwork, posting my job on onlinejobs.ph, and I can attest, like I found, as I'm sure you have too, I found some excellent talent there.
Oh, 100%.
The drawback is you're going to get 50 applicants that are not so awesome, and you got to weed through all that stuff. And so, hey, we're going to do that, kind of pre-screening and vetting for you, and only show you the best of the best. So if you're hiring a virtual assistant, you're probably short on time anyways. So here's a way to kind of cut that part out of the process.
That's
plus all the other stuff
right.
that you mentioned, the needs analysis, the setting yourself up for success in terms of task management and all that stuff.
That's the goal. The Buddha had the great quote that all suffering is due to ignorance. And our goal is to and we even say that, one of our tagline is to bring peace and productivity to people. So it's to alleviate any potential suffering that people experience when they first start on this outsourcing journey by removing some of the ignorance, getting it right the first time.
It's very zen. It's very zen of you.
It's, it is what it is. And, I'd be lying if I said my, practice of Buddhism and yoga didn't, creep into all areas of my life, but certainly this one, hopefully we can remove suffering. So maybe that should be our tagline, Zen Virtual Assistants Finder. Removal of suffering.
So a couple of points of differentiation I want to make. So the clearest alternative, the clearest competitor that I see is Chris Ducker's virtual staff finder service, who is also rocking our same haircut. So we've got some love for Chris over here.
What is going on with us outsourcing guys and shaved heads? But I'm glad you bring Chris up because he really is kind of the grandfather, the godfather of this whole movement, outsourcing. And listen, he's brilliant. He really opened so many doors for so many of us. And his service is awesome. I'll just share a couple quick things about how I think we're different.
Okay.
One is his model is, again, you have to pay, I think he's priced at $495. You have to pay $495 before someone will get in contact with you. And me personally, thinking back a few years ago, that was just a big step for me. I was new to it and I was already scared and uncertain to begin with. And that leap of faith was a bit too much for me. So that's when I decided, okay, let's do free consultation. I don't care how long it takes. Let's just get people comfortable. Okay. The second differentiation is Chris is now focused on, or I should say Virtual Staff Finder, is focused on general virtual assistants only.
Right.
And this is perfect. I think every entrepreneur, solopreneur, I could make some arguments about even employees, which I'll share with you in a second, could find value with a great general virtual assistant. But if you have a bigger project and a diversified project, the kind of thing where you might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 Filipino virtual assistants who you need to accomplish specific niche tasks, then that's where I think we come in. Because what we can do is we can find project managers. And those project managers are people who are comfortable managing actual teams under them. So a general VA is great, but if your project's a bit bigger, maybe you're launching an online business, and you need someone to help with a podcast or graphic design or build a website, do live chat, help you write an ebook, format the ebook, something like that, a real launch of a brand, you're talking about a few different people.
Right.
That wear custom hats. And that's where we would find project managers and help assemble the team. So for the $497 price or free, so somewhere between free and $497, depending on whether you go to the webinar or just pay on the site, then you have your team assembled. And not only is the team assembled, but it's put into some task management software and you're productive immediately.
Yeah, so it's like if you're looking for somebody beyond just that general VA, like you need a talented writer, or someone with special technical skills, or social media management, like that's where Chris or VSF has really niched down and say this is what we're going to focus on, and good on them. But hey, that opens up opportunity for services like yours. So, Joel, I want to wrap this up with just asking any special offers for the virtual assistant visitors?
Yes. Well, of course,
as a couple opportunities to get this thing at a discount or for free.
Yeah, and I just want to make it as easy as possible. So a couple different ways. One is attend the webinar, and there's a chance that you could get the service for free. But the other great way is Nick and I have agreed to do a special relationship. And if you go to zenvirtualassistancefinder.com/VAA, that's zenvirtualassistancefinder.com/VAA, as in you guessed it, virtual assistant assistant.
We'll link that up below this video too.
Yeah, we'll put a link below that video. That will be a special landing page. And on that, you will get the service for $400, no matter what, whether you attend the webinar or not. So if you can attend the webinar, awesome. If you can't, no problem. You still get the special offer from the webinar for all the virtual assistant viewers.
Awesome, Joel. Thank you so much for putting that together. Any parting words of outsourcing wisdom or otherwise before we?
Well, I know time is short and you want to wrap it up, but I'll just share something that has been occurring to me a lot, which is when we talk about virtual assistants, you of course think of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people comfortable working from home. And one type of person that gets left from the conversation are that of employees. So people who have a quote unquote job. And I believe more than ever, there's an opportunity for people to borrow a term from Seth Godin in his book, Linchpin, really become a linchpin within their organization. If they can be a person who is able to leverage a team of people in the Philippines. So if they're the person in the office who doesn't just wait for instructions, but could go to the boss and say, hey, this project we're doing, I have an idea. I know some people in the Philippines that can do everything we're talking about doing for quite literally 1/10 of the price and can get it done in a lot less time. And I understand how to manage these people, then you immediately become hugely invaluable to that company. So long story short, the model of, hey, if you go to college, you're guaranteed a quality of living, safety in your career, and a retirement at the end of the rainbow, that's just gone for our generation. That's a baby boomer dynamic, and it's just not happening anymore. So more and more people need to be unique and set themselves apart. And I think if you are an employee and you are the person who can bring ideas like that to management and say, I can manage a team in the Philippines, build the team in less than a week, and we can get this project done at 1/10 of the price, I think you immediately separate yourself from the other employees. So I just encourage people to think, hey, I have a job. What the heck would I need with a virtual assistant? I think you could do a lot with a virtual assistant. So those are my final thoughts.
Cool. Joel, thank you so much. And we will catch up with you soon. And everyone, it's zenvirtualassistancefinder.com/VAA. We'll link that up below this video. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.